I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged Podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
Welcome back to Politics Unplugged, the podcast edition. Today, we are joined by Jaime Molera and Roy Herrera. Thank you guys both for being here today. Before we start talking about the topics we're going to be talking about, you guys feel liberated from your 401ks yet? We sit here as we tape this podcast. Last I saw, it was like Dow was down, 1,800?
Yeah, I'm liberated from the money I used to have, or the net worth I used to have. I've been freed by that.
I'm not even looking at any of my investments. I'm just saying, okay, well, it'll come back eventually.
It's just temporary, man.
Yeah. Long term. You gotta look long term.
It's just temporary. But yeah, thanks a lot for stopping by here. And I think today, I just wanted to chat because, this is a place for politics, and, it feels like it's never ending. And what by that, I mean the campaigns are never ending. We saw this past week, somebody jump into the Democratic primary to win there and potentially challenge David Schweik. I mean, we've already seen a number of candidates say they're going to run for governor or possibly run for governor. We had another announcement this past week with Secretary of State's race with Alexander Culloden jumping in there and falsely claiming he was endorsed by his party chairwoman, Gina Swoboda, even though Gina Swoboda has said, no, I never endorsed him, and I'm thinking about running that race myself. But I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about that. You've been around politics as long as I have. Why is the campaign start so early now? Why does it feel like it's never ending? And am I wrong? Has it always been this way, or is this a change we've seen?
It has not always been this way. I can tell you, when I really started in earnest in Arizona politics and at the state legislature in the mid to late 90s, there was always that break. You had an election year, of course, would always be a lot
you
of
put
money.
the battle axes down. And
correct. But in the off years, or right after the election had passed, usually they would take about a year, and it was a lot lighter. And then the other thing that's pretty unique nowadays, it's not just candidates running, but you have all of these PACs and victory funds. Because you used to have, the Democrats had their victory fund, but it was controlled by the party. And then you had the Republican Party's victory fund. Right? And it was
pretty simple to track and follow and all that stuff.
And everybody just kind of pushed resources into those respective pots. But nowadays, I think you have at least 4 victory funds. The president has his own. The speaker has his own. Now you have Majority Leader Champ doing her own thing. So there's just a myriad of these kinds of things. And the difference is that we wouldn't, as lobbyists or people that lobby at the legislature, there's a prohibition against any kind. They can't give money right, during the legislative session. But you can give money to these victory funds.
Wow.
And so that's what you're starting to see now is a lot of folks get hit for these, again, Republican, Democrats, they all do it. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, to constantly not just, feed the campaigns of those folks. And I think you're right. I mean, Warren Peterson, the president, has announced that he's going to be running for Attorney General. So, again, there's a lot of folks, trying to line up and see how they can be supportive. I just think that that's a phenomenon that really started about 10 years ago.
Yeah, what have you been seeing over the past few years?
I totally agree with Jaime. I mean, and I feel like I'm part of the problem a little bit as an election lawyer. And as a
well, that's why we brought you
lawyer.
here. It's like specifically to blame you.
Yeah. So on the election side of things, I mean, Jaime's totally right. There used to be a break. I think most of the time you would sort of wait until, let's say, the fall or the winter of the off year to announce a run for the next year, right? And then, maybe about 10 years ago, I started seeing people starting to announce like in May. I'm like, wow, that's early. Like that's super, super early. And now it's pretty common. I mean, we had people announce in February, March this year, going into next year. So they just totally changed. The cycle has changed. There are no breaks. And some of it leads to the second part of what Jaime said that I agree with, and it has to do with the money. I think a lot of people do that now. They start running earlier because they have, this pressure to raise huge amounts of money. I mean, we've seen an explosion in the amount of money that you have to run or raise for, even legislature, right? I mean, it used to be you'd raise $50,000, and that's pretty good as a state legislature.
Look at Wendy Rogers, man.
Yeah,
I mean, she's raising sums that you didn't even see congressional candidates not that long ago.
Yeah. And in the congressional candidate, I mean, similarly, it's upward pressure. So the congressional candidates, if you raised $1 million, you raise a lot of money. Well, now, you got to raise $7 or $8 million through the general election, if it's a competitive race. So that's why people get in earlier. And the money thing is also helped by the fact that our campaign finance rules have gotten a little bit more, let's say more complicated, but more lax in some ways. And so you find your way, sort of around it. Yeah,
Fungible.
exactly.
Money is water,
exactly.
right? It finds its way through in politics, right? It's a hell of a boon to the political industrial complex, right? I mean, you can make a hell of a lot of money even when you lose. I've known some folks out there that get those candidates, man, and they milk them for a lot of money. They lose, they still made a lot of money, right?
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, and so, and it used to be, I think that it was a smaller, the universe was a lot smaller from the political consultants. And now I think it's exploded. I think Roy's point is spot on. The amount of money that is needed nowadays is just, and it really has happened over the last few years. I mean, it just seems like Arizona, and I think it's a combination of things. Because we're a more important electoral state for the presidency, we saw the dollars that it took was unprecedented, right? Mm-hmm. Tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars poured into Arizona. But then it just filters all the way down to even to now legislative races, where I agree. I think about 150,000, it seems to be about average for successful candidates.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too. You also see, like, these self-funders now. We were talking a little bit before we started taping. Roy had met with someone who was thinking about running for Congress, and you asked them if they were going to be a self-funder. And so you're going to throw in $1 million of your own money. That's absurd. You're going to throw $1 million of your own money to run for a job that pays you, what is it, $175,000 a year?
Right. It's crazy.
It's crazy. The most bonkers thing is Karen Taylor Robeson, who a couple of years ago spent, $22 million of her own money to unsuccessfully get out of a Republican primary to possibly win a job that pays $95,000 a year.
Well, I mean, and she's about to, she's running for governor, and I imagine that what she's going to spend on this next run is going to be well beyond what she spent last time, multiples of that probably. That benefits people that are super wealthy, because there's a lot of successful people out there that are worth, a good amount of money, but when they have to think about putting $1 million in, that's a lot of money for them, right? And so, but it just goes back to, again, like if you're going to run, you just have to be able to raise a ton. And then you're going to have to spend a ton of your time raising money. I mean, this sort of gets back to kind of the question about the effect of it on public policy, which I know you want to get into. But, part of it is that these people have to be on call time. They have to be, doing fundraisers all the time. And that's going to take away time and energy from actually, like, let's say, meeting with your constituents or working on public policy. And so the pressure of the money, I think, has really change things, I would say, for the negative, and that's probably against my interest as a campaign finance lawyer, but I think that is the result here, is that the emphasis is on that instead of other things. Yeah, and I did, and this is the reason I wanted to have the discussion, because ultimately it comes down to, what are the effects of that? I mean, public out there is cynical. I'm cynical. You look at, there's so much money out there, and everybody's just doing this to make money and blah, blah, blah. There's a practical effect that you see it, and maybe if I'm wrong, you can correct me, at the legislature. It's like when you're always campaigning, when you're always fighting with your opponents, it's like you're not really focusing on solving problems. I use the analogy of like a light switch. You and I can argue forever over why it doesn't work or why it's broken, but we're not fixing it if that's what we're doing. What have you seen?
No, that's very true. I think you see a lot of, and again, it's very bipartisan when it comes to this, because both sides do it. I think you see a governor who's beholden to, in my opinion, the Arizona Education Association that raised her a lot of money. I think she was backing their issues up pretty aggressively, and you see that happen. Now, conversely, the Republicans, if whatever members running for different offices or they're trying to position themselves, then they're pushing legislation that really doesn't have anything to do with what a lot of people feel are critical issues for the state, or getting things done, like the renewal of Prop 123, for instance, the state trust lands that could add more money into to the overall K-12 system. So they're not really focused on those kinds of things, but it's really the types of legislation that'll do one of two things: help with their fundraising efforts, which I totally agree, but also help with their base that realizes that that's going to be the issues that'll gin up these folks that are going to go out and vote for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, on that point, I totally agree. I think part of the problem is in this sort of perpetual campaign where there is no break, you're always constantly thinking about your reelection. One of the things you're thinking about in that is whether you're going to get primaried, whether you're going to lose. I mean, this is another phenomenon over the last, I don't know how many years, but certainly in the Trump era, you're constantly worried about that on the Republican side, and then Democrats are worried about that too from folks on the far left. And so what that means ultimately is you really don't have much incentive to compromise, to enact any kind of bipartisan legislation.
Yeah, because not only do you risk getting primaried if you're on one side or the other, but you risk the money that you need to wage a successful campaign.
Exactly. You piss off your base, things like that. And so there's just no incentive to do that, and we're sort of left in a place where nobody wants to work with the other side. And unfortunately, in Arizona, bipartisan legislation is a necessity. I mean, I think it's a good thing that we have, potential bipartisanship. But the reality is, to get anything done, you have to have bipartisan agreement, given the split government we have here. But again, there's no incentive to do that. So we're kind of in this place where a lot of the biggest needs, a lot of the biggest issues are not, addressed. And Prop 123 is a perfect example of this, where it's pretty obvious we need to do something here, but are the two sides going to compromise?
A great example of somebody that was a casualty of this kind of a process was Ken Bennett.
Yes.
Ken Bennett, very long-time respected senator, was representing the Prescott area, District 1.
Former Secretary of State, Senate President, former Secretary of State, yeah.
Correct. And there was a lot of votes that he voted against his caucus on because, for a couple of reasons, there were kind of extreme, silly bills. But a lot of the folks in what's called the Freedom Caucus, right, which is the more MAGA Republicans, really wanted to force those votes. I mean, those bills had zero chance of becoming law because Katie Hobbs was vetoing everything. So even if he would have voted for them, and a lot of folks try to encourage him to vote for it, to say, look, Ken, you're killing yourself, because it upset his right-wing base. And sure enough, he decides, you know what? No, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to vote against these things on principle. Well, from a political standpoint, he then loses pretty drastically, even though he tried to raise the money and the business community tried to support him. He just got killed by Mark Fincham. So you just see that quite a bit.
Who didn't live in the district, by the way.
Right.
I mean, Ken Bennett's. The Bennett family it's got deep roots in the fighting first district, of Arizona.
Right.
And it didn't even stand a chance at that point. He just was Fincham was the typical carpetbagger, moved up there, but he had the support from the primary up there.
Correct.
Yeah. So another thing I see too, and you're not really supposed to use your office to campaign, right? But you talk about finding ways around that. I see so much garbage. Pardon me. I see so much bullshit. So many bullshit bills filed every year at the legislature, and they're not going to go anywhere. They're very extreme. But then, like 5 minutes after they're filed, you see a fundraising email come out. It's like, look at this bill I filed. It's like, yeah, I ain't going anywhere, dipshit. But like, okay, raise some money off of it. I mean, I see a lot of that. I mean, how much of that is you guys seeing?
A lot of that, and I think that there's another aspect to all of this too. And none of these things, unfortunately, I think are very fixable.
No,
it's just the way it is. But another aspect of this is just the sort of 24-hour short attention span, news cycle that we have, and the short attention span that people have. Because I think you're constantly looking to your point. You drop a bill, you do a press conference, you get on your Twitter, you talk to your base about what you just did, you send out a fundraising email. and it's just a constant need to do that because you're trying to get as much attention as possible to you. And so it is, you know, I've described it as performative. It is performative, right? I mean, you're doing that just so that people pay attention to you. And then you put it out on your social media, and then that's how it works. And that's
ridiculous.
Not really, you know, from my perspective, like legislating, right? I mean, you're just not really thinking about what's realistic. You're just, again, trying to appease your followers.
Yeah, and it's so ridiculous. Some of the bills they might as well be like, I'm banning the semicolon. Check out what I did. What?
But then digging a little deeper on this topic, and I think it's one of the reasons why this system is now starting to evolve into what it is you also don't have the media scrutiny that I think we had in the past. I think you know, you covered the legislature, I thought, very, very well. You had folks that really understood the process better and knew that these bills didn't have a chance, right? And they would call it out. Nowadays, you don't get that level of scrutiny, I think, on these things. So then a legislator, or the groups, I should say, the groups that are pushing these types of issues, that recruit these legislators to do it, convince them that it's in their political interest, it'll help them from a financial standpoint. They then create their own echo chamber, and they use the social media venues. They use a lot of forums that are, again, bought and paid for either by the right or by the left. And you're starting to see that now. There's a lot of social media outlets that are very well funded, but they're funded by national organizations that have a particular point of view.
And they don't, from what I found, and it'd be interesting to, get your perspective on this, and as consultants and whatnot, and what you tell politicians all the time. But from my point of view, is every time I hear a candidate say, like, we hate the media, blah, 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 you're fake, blah, blah. And, they don't need us. However, they do need their media.
Correct.
Like, if you're a Republican, you're probably a lot more concerned about what Gateway Pundit has to say about you than, say, the typical Arizona Republic.
Right.
Which is really weird to talk about incentives. It's a strange place to be, because I have seen just working in the industry for 20 years, like, our impact and our influence on it has just really, really greatly diminished. And then you see those sites, that used to be just fringe sites have just grown in popularity, but in an influence as well. I think they're extremely influential. What do you guys think?
Well, go ahead.
Well, they certainly are. I mean, certainly in safe districts, right? I mean, that is the battle, because you're always just worried about, again, the primary. And so you want to know that your base and your people, your followers are happy. And if that means, making sure the Gateway Pundit is giving you good coverage, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Where I think, and this gets to the piece of, like, I guess what I tell my clients is, most of the time, if I'm representing somebody, it's probably somebody that's in a competitive district, right? I mean, because that's where, it's the money, the attention, that's where the battle is going to be. And I think a lot of times I try to tell my clients that it is not always the base, let's say media or social media outlets that the voters that you need to win over are listening to, right? So if you're in a swing district, or the state of Arizona, if you're running statewide, every race is a pretty close race, right? And it's always turning on, the independent vote, more moderate voters. And a lot of those people aren't going to Gateway Pundit, or I don't know what the sort of equivalent would be on the left, right? That's not where they're getting their news. So it's important not to just cater to that all the time on your social media, but think about, like, where are sort of those swing voters getting their information and being able to reach out to them. That's super important. Otherwise, you're not going to win these close races. But, again, it's a little bit different depending on where you're running, I think, what you care about.
Yeah. And they're not disconnected either. I mean, it's all part of the same thing. So, for instance, you have consultants that are helping a particular candidate that wants to run for a statewide position, is in the legislature right now. So they help them raise money, but they also work to figure out what types of legislation, like we just talked about, is going to be effective for them, what polls well, and then how to get that social media out there. So they're raising a budget, not just for that person's campaign, but it's for all those things that happen in the legislature, including getting out creating that echo chamber, as I mentioned. So it's all very well orchestrated, and it's a lot more sophisticated now than I've ever seen, because it used to be where, you'd have folks that were just policy folks and work on bills and work on legislation, and then they'd have a campaign person that would totally separate.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's very, very intertwined, and I see that quite a bit.
Yeah, and and again with it's like never-ending campaigning. Like they'll announce early they want to go, raise money and stuff like that, but it's like almost like quasi-campaigning because
sure.
Because you start talking about different media chambers, like they don't have to talk to us; they can talk to whoever they want to, or not talk to anybody. And like, hell, screw it. Let's pick on Karen Taylor Robeson for a second. Yeah, seriously. I mean, I have invited her on the show, Politics Unplugged podcast, a TV version, week after week after week. She announced a couple months ago now, like you're running for freaking governor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're not talking about the issues. I mean, the president of the United States, who she is, touting that endorsement. Like, where are you? What do you think about, as we tape right now, the Dow Jones is, tanking down 2,000? What do you think about? Those are all fair, legitimate questions. But because of this, media environment we're in right now, she doesn't have to answer those questions. And in the past, I think, I think there would have been a lot of pressure for her to do that. But it doesn't matter if the Republic calls her out or if I call her out on my podcast. I mean, what do you guys think?
No, I would agree, but again, it's on both sides.
Yeah. Well,
I think there's
sure.
been some criticism of Governor Hobbs not really coming out and pushing significant issues because in order to really just stay back and play defense.
Yeah.
Right now, all she has to do is kind of point to the legislature and say they're extreme and I'm vetoing all the bills and everything's going to be fine. But then there's a number of issues that have not been, in my opinion, pushed as hard as a governor should push them. And again, I would go back to Prop 123. That money is going to be covered by the legislature. But the unfortunate thing is you have hundreds of millions of dollars that could be used for infrastructure, for water, for transportation, whatever it might be. But because you haven't seen that type of concerted effort to really get that going, the legislature said, "Well, we don't want to do it." There's been no pressure on them, so now they really don't have to, and the money is going to be funded to education, but it's taking out a lot of dollars from where it should be. So I think on both sides, I think both Republicans and Democrats have forgotten what it's like to be true leaders and focus on the things that make a difference for our state.
Well, so on that example, now I think Governor Hobbs, in fairness, has come on your show.
She has come on the show. She is, and to be fair, she's been a lot more available, and she has to be just by
being governor.
She does take questions and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like my frustration is with Karen Taylor Robeson was like, fine, you ran or you announced earlier probably than you wanted to. We all know that. But come and answer the questions.
Yeah. Well, there's one way to interpret her not coming on the show.
Yeah.
Which is, say, less charitable, which is that she's afraid to come on the show because she doesn't want to answer those tough questions. She doesn't want to answer, why did you support Democrats in the past? Why don't how have you changed your political philosophy into being so pro-Trump? How does that how is that authentic? Yeah. But the more charitable interpretation would be, and this kind of gets to our conversation today, which is that she doesn't need to, because right now she's totally focused on winning that primary, and in her mind, the electorate for that primary, aren't necessarily watching their show. They're going to Turning Point rallies or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's her. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. It may not be true, but I think that might be the calculation where she's like, I don't really care about that right now because I need to win my primary. Now, the big question to me is going to be if she were to win that primary, and I don't know if she will against Biggs, but if she were after that, is she going to come on your show and then try to moderate herself or not? Or does she feel like, she's just going to continue on the Trump train, even though we might go into an election next year where he's very unpopular?
What if she tries to modify, modify herself, and we don't even know she's modified because she hasn't said anything for a damn year? I don't know. It's one of those things. Like it used to be in the day, like you at least come out and you trot out the old candidate and put him in front of a microphone. I mean, Doug Ducey hated going in front of the media when he first started running, and he was honestly pretty terrible at it back in 2014. He was not good, but he took questions.
No pun intended, but I'm going to trump you with another one. I think Jan Brewer is probably the most worst media. But I got to tell you, I have argued that I'm biased because I worked in the whole administration, but I would say Jan Brewer was one of our more effective governors that I've ever seen. I mean, if you look at the 100%. Major things that got done and the things she had to deal with, But she certainly was not media savvy. But I'm curious to hear if Andy Biggs has accepted any invitations yet, or have you invited him?
All right, let's talk about that. Let's pull back the curtain. Yes, I have asked Biggs to be on the TV show, on the podcast. I will say there's been progress made. Maybe there's a detente going on between the good congressman and I, because in the past I would have just been told to fuck off. I have been told now, quote, they didn't say no. So that to me is progress.
Well,
I would love to talk to Mr. Biggs about this, because I find the potential of his candidacy to be infinitely fascinating. You know, he is not going to have the money of Karen Taylor Robeson.
Correct.
However, he has the street cred with the MAGA streets, right? That I think Karen Taylor Robeson is going to try to buy.
Right.
So can she buy it, you know, and take it away from Andy Biggs? And I think a lot of it comes down to the Trump endorsement. It's still the gold ticket in the Republican primary. But that man could change his mind 3 times by the time he crosses the road and end up endorsing both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Prove
in
me
fact,
wrong.
I would probably think that's the likely outcome at some point. You know,
Yeah.
assuming they both stay in the race, that
Yeah.
he's going to do that, because that's what he always does. I'm just thinking about the term "the MAGA streets," though. I think that was
Out in the MAGA streets. It's hardcore out there. It's rough on those MAGA streets, particularly today.
yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for indulging me in this in this discussion. It's just, to me, it just hit me again this week. It's like, God, it feels like November is just last week, and here we are. We're just ramping up again.
Well, like I said, and it's also not just the campaigns, the individual. It's all these PACs that are out there.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of them, and they're raising a lot of money right now for getting ready for 2026.
Mm-hmm. Anything can be done, or is it we're just stuck in this cycle, this spinning downwards, or whatever you want to look at?
I mean,
I don't know.
You know, there was a moment, I think, that at least on the Democratic side, you know, we'd say, well, maybe we can, you know, undo Citizens United or something, you know, because that's a lot, you know, that court decision led to a lot of the unlimited money being spent. But, you know, I think we're, you know, with this U.S. Supreme Court, there's not, you know, that's not going to happen in my lifetime. So the money thing is not going to go away. I think ultimately, though, in Jaime talked about the echo chamber that I totally agree that candidates fall into. And the reality is, I think the best candidates, the candidates that win the hardest races, particularly, again, at the statewide level here, are the ones that get out of the echo chamber. So there is a reward there to not always just fall into the same thing with your base, and instead going out to talk to regular people and, you know, again, thinking about where those regular people get their information and trying to meet them there, as opposed to just tweeting all the time or, you know, whatever you're doing. There is a reward there, and I think the best candidates figure that out.
And I would say, too, that in Arizona, I think that every time we've done the so-called silver bullet to bring transparency and bring fairness and take the business interests or the special interests out of campaigns, it always makes it worse. Always. I think of all these reforms that have taken place, it just creates all of these other structures that allows them to raise money and kind of get around it.
I like clean elections.
Oh, that was just
boy.
that was one of the worst things that occurred, in my opinion, in Arizona's political climate. The other, you know, and it would have been a disaster, in my opinion. It was a ranked choice voting. So there's always these types of, this is going to be the cure for all this stuff.
I know Roy is a big fan of ranked choice voting over here.
No comment on that one.
But the bottom line is, you're always going to have, in my opinion, money in politics. I mean, come on. It always has been and it always will be. But in my opinion, the ones that tend to be successful are the ones that roll up their sleeves and have a good game plan and that are effective. Carrie Lake was a horrible campaigner. She got a lot of money, but she just was not a good, effective campaigner, in my opinion.
She's a great communicator.
Ruben Gallego ran a heck of a campaign.
Yeah.
Now, everything else being equal, the Republicans really should have won that seat. The Republicans should have won the governorship. The Republicans should have won Secretary of State, Attorney General. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
On pure numbers.
On pure numbers.
Yeah, and it bears out when you go down the ballot. I mean, it's Kim Yee is the baseline test, right?
Correct.
There's a straight partisan race there. The treasurer race been 22. Yeah.
So that's the bottom line, in my opinion: is good candidates, disciplined campaigns, good messaging, all of those things that win elections.
Yeah.
But when you have bad candidates, you can have all this kind of money. It's still gonna be a long night, an election night, if you don't have people that know what they're doing.
Yeah, and to me, I just see the effects. It spills over into the legislature, and you see the campaign continues, and it's just about raising money, maintaining power. When I honestly feel when I first got down there, they would fix some problems down there from time to time. And I've had, former lawmakers tell me, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, is, what one former lawmaker tell me, that he feels that they lost the art of legislating down at the Capitol now.
What can I tell you?
Because when you file a bill, that was the last thing this former Republican wanted to do. He wanted to serve his constituents if there were ways to fix problems without filing legislation. He was an old school Republican like that.
So the way it used to work, and like I said now, when you used to have the Democratic Party more in control of their own funding, Republican Party controlling the overall funding, there was much more discipline because the leadership of both parties would have a much higher say, so they could have a lot more discipline within their caucuses.
And they controlled the money.
Exactly, because they control the money.
Yeah.
Now, and then there was a bunch of reforms to do away with that because people want transparency. But look what happened. Now you have what used to be caucuses that would say, yeah, this is good for the party. This is good for us positioning ourselves to maybe win the governorship.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't have that anymore. You have members that 100%, as I've seen it more and more, look out for their own interests instead of the good of their particular caucus or greater good of their party, or be in a position to maybe win the governor's office. I mean, Kari Lake losing to Karen Taylor Robeson the last time around, Robeson would have won by 15 points.
If Robeson won, I think so too, and I think the evidence bore that out in the attitude in the Hobbs race. If I remember, I mean they did not want to face it. At least I felt they did not want to face Karen Taylor Robeson. But
the difference was, if you had a disciplined party, they would have made sure a lot of these bills that were put out there that I think made the case for Kari Lake, and Kari Lake took them on, like the abortion issue. That was one of her big things that she really ran to the right on, and it helped her within the party base to beat Karen Taylor Robeson. That wasn't seen as strong as Kari Lake was. But those bills were constantly pushed, and it was really one of the top things that legislators in the legislature did. And again, that if they were disciplined and they had a strategy of wanting to win the governor's office, they would have stayed away from that and let Karen Taylor Robeson not have to be put in a bad position.
And I agree with a lot of what Jaime said. Now, I'm not sure I would concede that Hobbs would have just lost to Robeson.
I know. We know where you stand, Roy.
Hobbs would have ran a different race, I think, in that scenario.
Okay, we would have been 13 points, not 15 points.
But
Hobbs may have debated.
but I do think, Jaime raises some great points in that, the party leadership thing is a real thing, right? I mean, the caucus discipline just isn't there on either side, and so that does make it harder to get anything done. Also, again, I mean, Mr. Bennett is a good example where you just don't have a lot of members down there that are deal makers, that are interested, right, in trying to do that. And we have done in the past some great things together, the parties, and the Medicaid expansion is a perfect example of that, and I know that's a Brewer legacy, right? The Medicaid expansion. Yeah, and so it has happened before, but all these things make it more difficult. The relationships, I think, are different. This all applies federally too, by the way. I mean, that's even, I worked in Congress, and so I know this pretty intimately. But the relationships between the members just aren't there like they once were. These people used to hang out, at Durant's, Republicans, Democrats, drinking, getting to know each other. And I know that seems silly, but, there was some trust by at least some of the members. That doesn't really happen anymore.
Well, let's not bring up Durant's. It's a sore subject around here.
It's coming back.
It's not going to be the same.
Just your token, I've been told, will still work. Your dessert token. So.
Yeah, until they decide not to, and they're open. Look, don't get me worked up about Durant's here. But anyway, I think we better start wrapping it up there right now. I think we went way over time, but not too bad. It's been great talking with you guys. End it right here, man. What are you guys listening to this weekend after you've been liberated by the tariffs? What are you guys listening to? What kind of music you listening to this weekend?
Well, I always listen to the Beatles. So I'm a Beatles fanatic. So
more Beatles and Stones?
Very much so.
Okay, next time we come back, we're going to have a debate about that.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's an easy one to debate. I'll be like Carrie Lake against Katie Hobbs.
Oh,
oh wow.
damn.
Wow, that's a good debate. I want to see that. I'll switch the answer to be more bigger pop culture. I'm going to be watching White Lotus on Sunday. I'm very excited about that.
Really? I was.
It's the season finale.
Yeah, I just didn't
Who's
get
gonna
into
die?
this. I couldn't get into the third season.
It's crazy. It's different than the last two because like literally every character is totally irredeemable, but I still like it. So maybe I'm a pessimist.
I'm still recovering from Severance. If we're talking TV shows here. I mean that one. So hey, thanks guys for stopping by here. Give us some of your time, and thanks for the conversation.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.